I'm Rob Licuria, senior editor at Gold Derby, here with three body problem star Liam Cunningham. Liam, I was completely blown away by how audacious and ambitious this show is. So, what most excited you about this story after you did that first deep dive before production had started?
Ooh, well, I think it's pretty obvious with the people that are involved. First and foremost, it's always the thing that's kept me going in my career is the bundle of pages that fall that come through my letterbox. I mean, it's all an actor has to go on is what he sees. It sounds pretty obvious, but after that, it's the people involved who put the ink on those pages. And when you've got someone of the quality of David Benioff, Dan Weiss, and Alexander Wu, and let's not forget Rose as well. Um, um, it's just unavoidable. I mean, how I got the job, I was in talks to do another job, um, quite serious talks. Luckily enough, I hadn't said yes. We were just discussing, and I got a phone call from Dan Weiss from the guys, and Dan Weiss said that job that you're in talks, you're not going with them, you come on with us. And I literally, this is probably the most unprofessional thing I've ever done. I just said, okay, right, talk to you. And I hung up and I went, I don't
Shit.
even know what the part is. It could be a day. I could be turning down a rather spectacular part to go and
Yeah.
do with these guys. And it wasn't until after that when I arrived that this beast of Thomas Wade showed up on the page. So luckily enough, it worked out. But definitely not desperate, not very professional of me
Not
to
at
just give
all.
an okay on a phone call.
Terrible,
Yeah.
terrible practice. But you get Dan and Dave calling you and saying, "We want you on this project." It just shows me that you have such not blind faith, but real faith in the guys. And of course, with Alexander, who you've gotten to know, of course, on the show.
Yes.
But with these two in particular, they brought you back. You were Sir Davos Seaworth on Game of Thrones. Now you're Thomas
Yeah.
Wade. Two characters that a lot of people really love for some reason. I think a lot of it has to do with you. So it tells me that you wanted to work with them again. Why? What is it about that combination that you just valued so much?
it's always the quality of the storytelling. And I think, I think there's one thing, and you've seen the Irish thing in the
Yeah.
last year or two at Banshees and
Oh,
with Barry Keoghan and Colin and Paul Mescal and Kerry Condon and all sorts of people, and Saoirse Ronan will be exploding very shortly, I believe, again.
yeah.
And there's a thing in Ireland, and I wouldn't even call it a talent pool. It's in our DNA, storytelling. That's what we did. We were a very, very poor nation for a long, long time. And the thing that kept us going, and one of the cheapest forms of entertainment, not so much in our world at the moment with the expense of making shows and stuff, but storytelling is a big thing. Um, and your ability to spin a yarn, as we call it here. And so I think it's in our DNA. And these guys, you have to remember they met in Dublin. These
Yeah.
two fine Jewish gentlemen met in Trinity College, where they bumped into each other. And that's how the whole game is, from a location point of view, how it happened. And they love long form storytelling, and they're kind of experts on Joyce and Beckett, and the value of words is incredibly important to them. It's one of the reasons I think, if you've ever rewatched, because it happened to me, if you ever rewatch Game of Thrones, it's as enjoyable the second time as it is the first time,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and that's quality of writing. So storytelling and the words that they put in their actors' mouths are just glorious. It's just wonderful, and also that they aim so high with difficult storytelling that most normal people wouldn't attempt to go near, because they love the whole unfilmable thing, um,
Yeah.
which is extraordinary.
Yeah, imagine you tell Dan and David this is unfilmable. It probably drove them to want to do it even more. And I remember Jess Hong, your co-star, she mentioned that you got to do the thing that freaks you out. And I think that's probably a lot of their motto, and it brings you all along for the journey. So then what happens then? You get the script or you get the outline, you're signed up. you're told about your character. What were the characteristics that you really wanted to lean into when working out how you wanted to approach playing Thomas Wade?
It's on one of the few occasions, a lot of the time that you do projects, you're putting out fires. So you're trying to get a through line on a character, and you're kind of, you're going to the director, producers, writers, and kind of go, you know what? I think to get us from A to C, I think I have to do B a little more subtly, but it's a character arc that your job as an actor is to make believable. With these guys, you kind of, it's so good the writing that you kind of turn off that muscle. You service the writing because they've in a lot of cases, they've kind of done the work for you. It's like doing a really good classic play. I remember a director said to me many years ago, I was finding the same difficult in it. That's the Streetcar Named Desire I did with Francis McDormand a long time ago.
Wow.
And the director said to me, brilliant piece of direction, get out of the way of the play.
Wow.
Yeah, it's, in other words, Liam, it's a classic for a reason. Is that the writing is so good. People come back to it all the time. Directors, producers come back to it all the time. It's not a flavor of the month thing. It's a classic because everybody tried to prove that it isn't, and they can't. And these guys' writing is a little bit like that. It's, you get out of the way of the words and you service the words. And in a sense, it's really freeing. And I was asked in another interview, what sort of research did you do, and what sort of... And from the get-go, he's enigmatic. You don't know, he's shadowy. You don't know where he's come from. What is this Irish guy that's able to ring up the head of the UN or ring up governments and order 1,000 nuclear weapons? You're going to go, who's writing his checks? Who's paying him?
I don't know what research necessarily you can do for the chief planetary defense strategist. It just
yeah.
It's something else.
There's not a great Rolodex you can look at.
Exactly.
Listen, I've got this thing to do.
Yeah, exactly. But
yeah, you kind of, yeah. Go ahead.
I just feel like, there's still, as you say, there's so much that you were gifted in this part. And I want to get into specifics because by episode 5, we the audience finally get this big reveal about the San T, and they're an existential threat. And Wade and Jin, you and Jess Hong, are taking in the information on our behalf, and we get that info done. But I can imagine that both of you would have been in a green room set with not seeing anything at all. And can you remember the days at filming that particular sequence and what it was like?
Look, it's just when we put the headsets on and go visit the game. Visit Safon, the wonderful Sishamuka. The woman with the greatest name in entertainment.
So good.
And she's a gorgeous human being as well, on every level. She's really sweet. We had this. It was kind of strange because I'd seen a volume, and what they do the Mandalorian on, and this 360 semicircle, not 360, whatever it is, 270 or 180, circular video screen. And the room that we did that in was 15 times the size of the volume, and it was an entire 4 walls with sort of LED screens, but it was incredibly strange to shoot on it because we did have they gave us a sense of scale. I think with a lot of the volumes, they can be very kind of compact. They're not huge rooms, and the one we were in Shepperton was the oddest thing. I remember because I carry my camera, photographic camera, with me everywhere just to document productions and stuff like that. I've got about enough for about 10 coffee table books on Game of Thrones.
You should.
But it was the same with this. But it was so weird because this I have mirrorless digital. When you take a shot of it, it's just it's the weirdest thing because things just came up striped, and it was just odd. These walls that were changing colors and producing sunsets. So you weren't seeing a picture like the Mandalorian. It wasn't like a backdrop, a sight. It was kind of stuff that was laid on later. But they laid out sand and they laid out, and we saw some cinematics, so we could get a sense of it. You always worry that your part of your brain is taken up by trying to fill in what's not there.
Yeah.
But with the sense of scale on the soundstage that we shot on, you got a sense of that. So you didn't have to apportion a certain amount of your brain to try and fill in the gaps, because that can affect performance. So we were blessed as artists, that we had imaginative freedom, if that's a phrase. I suppose it is, and it was joyous, and the guys are so respectful of our processes, that it's really cool, and and there's no two actors have the same process. Myself and Benny, for instance, work extremely differently in preparation and stuff. And it's glorious. It's like it's viva la difference, I just love the way everybody has their own way into a scene or their own way into a character. It's part of the joy. It's what makes relationships interesting.
Of course it does, absolutely. In fact, let's talk about Benedict Wong, because I really love that kind of quasi buddy cop interaction between Wade and she. It's that rapport. I mean, Benedict told me that the rapport between you and him was very easy to establish. You always had a glimmer in your eye. You knew that you had to get the job done, but there was always room for you both to have a bit of fun. Do you agree?
100%. And Benedict uses the phrase, which is not the most artistic phrase in the world. He said, "Myself and Liam are grafters. We're grafters. We work." And I'll give you an example. We had this the scene. It's really funny and really weird, where I pull out the stirrups, the Genghis Khan stirrups. It's just like, what the hell is that scene doing there? But at the same time, it's an incredible character scene, where I say I'm 1% more Mongolian. And I think Benedict says, "Yeah, we're practically brothers." I couldn't have loved. But just one practical thing. We weren't supposed to film that week. That scene was supposed to be like the end of the following week, and we shot during lockdown. And somebody that was scheduled to work couldn't film. They got a positive. So so the producers came to us and goes, that really long scene, that intricate scene, we need to shoot that tomorrow. And I looked at them and I told them I was going to kill them in their beds for doing that to us, for attempting to ruin our careers by having us unprepared. So I looked at Benny, and I think we stayed up for a ridiculous amount of time. We had a full day's filming. Then we had to go home, grab some takeaway, and then we were we were many hours until we had to hit the sacks for the work the next day to try and get the scene down. And sometimes when you're put in peril like that, it focuses the mind. And the scene is glorious, and it's a tricky scene to pull off. It looks kind of nonchalant, and it's just, to use that phrase, and I get it, that buddy thing between the two of them, and that kind of character thing of this couple. But we kind of knocked it out of the park. But it's the preparation. That's what Benny was talking about when he was talking about grafters, is that we graft, we nail it down, we run it, we treat each scene like it's theatre. That you have to get into the rhythm of it. You have to get into the melody of the scene. And when you're doing that, that's when the lines arrive. You don't run lines, they're learn lines. You run lines to get the melody of a scene, to get the tune. The words follow. And that's what we like to do. And Benny and myself were theatre animals. That's where our apprenticeships were done. In other words, when the curtain goes up, it's 8 o'clock in the evening, and you don't concentrate for a take for a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. You've got 2 hours to hold it together, and you've no editor saving you, or no 2 shots saving you. You're exposed. So that level of jeopardy is in your bones, that nervousness, that adrenaline, which feeds into doing scenes. But the methods are exactly the same, but it's just like a different set of muscles. It's filled with trepidation, but wonderful fun.
It's wild. Like, it just sounds wild, and like it shows. David, Dan, and Alexander were very careful to make this show very heavy on character, not just on content, not just on their concepts. And it really
Yeah,
shows. In fact, with Wade's character, I was so taken with the end, and I'm sure this comes up all the time, but one of the big mysteries is Wade gets another visit from the beautiful C. Shamuka and
yeah,
sees the countdown, which suggesting the sun tees onto him. And
yeah,
you really nailed that. He looked terrified. Talk me through that
yeah.
scene. That was amazing.
Oh man, it was pretty tricky to do, and there was a lot of screaming. They edited down what we got to see. We had enough time to cover a lot of bases, so we threw in some extra stuff, and then the guys uh, pared it back. But we had a bit of a day on the private jet, which is not mine, by the way. It is Mr. Wade's, but it's not my private jet.
Yeah.
Netflix haven't paid me that much.
Hi.
But um, yeah, it was interesting because you do not see fear with him until that moment.
Yeah.
Um, so it was finding that Safon, Sishamuga's character, is threatening. The plane starts to slightly go down. She can
Yeah.
take him out, but it was this mixture. It was a tricky thing to find that there's a level of antagonism towards her, wanting to kill her. I mean, this guy's a killer, as we know from episode 5.
That's right.
And she comes down and goes, "We like what you're doing. You could be useful to us. We'd be working together in the future. Oh, by the way, have a look around and see yourself with no eyes." And
I mean, I
I
know.
just love, yeah. So it's that mixture where I had this hardness where I'm not letting her get to me, but you can see that there's fear, but there's not cowardice, and that was the thing to keep out. Yeah, I was trying to keep away from it just being all out. Oh, he's he doesn't lose. I had to hold on to his bravery. There had to be bravery in the middle of that, even though there's
Yeah.
shots, and even though she's there, he still wants to take. She's his enemy.
Yeah.
They are his enemy. So it was finding that kind of balance, and it's a great setup for season 2. Should we ever be
Should we
officially
ever?
announced?
I
Yeah,
mean, yeah, he looks really, he's brave, he's tough, but in that moment for a second, he looks really small and vulnerable. And
yes, I
we
agree.
are small and vulnerable. We've got this looming extraterrestrial overlords coming
Yeah,
toward us. Of course we are. And it makes a
yeah.
lot of sense. And season 2, look, hurry up. Like I said to David Alexander, what are you doing? Have you just asked Netflix, just say, give me the money, let's go. And they said, we're working on it.
Yeah. I'll show up. Tell me where. Tell me when. I'll be there.
I'm there.
I'm dying to get back. I'm dying to get back to this because I think Alexander said it. I mean, the scope of the show, as we know, it starts in '60s in the people's in China during the Cultural Revolution.
Mhm.
But the scope of the story goes from then till the end of time.
Yeah.
So I have no idea where this is going.
There's
I
so
don't read the
much.
books. Yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't read the books because I didn't read Game of
Yeah.
Thrones either because I didn't want the books in my head. That's not my job, and it's not what
That's
I'm trying to do.
unusual, you know. A lot of times people will dive in and read the books, but this is actually quite different to the books. And as long as you understand the concepts and you understand Thomas Wade, you
Yeah,
don't need to read the books. But you know what, mate?
yeah,
I reckon season 2 is pretty likely because it's the #1 show on Netflix. It's
yeah,
killing it all over the world. So on
yeah.
that
No,
note,
it's really cool.
it's brilliant. Congratulations on some really amazing work, and thanks for your time today.
No problem. Thank you very much, sir. You've been very kind.